I just want to see more examples of people doing real things, and I don't care what we call them. And so when I hear people talk about here's how DAO should be, and like this really long academic, I mean, I teach at a university, like I'm academic AF. Let's just like come together with a mission and collectively do something.
Chris, we are so excited to chat with you today. Welcome to Built on Web3.
Yeah, thanks for having me here.
Of course. So I kind of want to start this episode off just having a general discussion about Web3 and just kind of get a sense of how you're thinking about Web3 in 2023. There's a lot of threes this year. So Chris, what is Web3? What are we doing here?
I think Web3 is having an identity crisis right now. It means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. For artists, it's a dream of having self-monetization of your art, of your music. For bullish bros, it's about making the bet of a lifetime. For developers and entrepreneurs, I think it's about this new internet that we're creating. And in some ways, I think this is the year that we figure out what we're building, because there's been a lot of experimentation. And I would say the main thing that joins all of these people together, whether it's like music or NFTs or, you know, even Bitcoin, Web3 is this umbrella of, in my eyes, we're improving the internet. And what that really means is, I would say it's three principles that we follow with what we're building at Console, which I'll tell you more about. And I think it's creating experiences, creating software, creating identity online, like usernames, all of this stuff, like reimagining it in a way that so we own a piece of the web, so that we own our identity, so that we own our social graph, so that we own our art and money, in a way that it can't be censored or taken down if someone like Elon Musk buys the company or if it goes bankrupt. So it's about really making, I think, just technology, apps, experiences online that we have ownership in and that are resilient to any one person or small group of people coming in and trying to take down. So
Web3 is all about internet of ownership. We can finally own the things that we have, and I think that's a really powerful idea. What was it about Web3 like that excites you the most? What about Web3 made you just drop everything and start a Web3 native company?
I want to say I've been in Web3 for 20 years. And like by that, what I mean is when I was in college, I still am a musician, but I was in college as a musician. This was like the early aughts, so like, you know, early 2000s. I discovered Napster, and as a musician, the ability to have Napster. And well, for Napster, for anyone listening who doesn't remember, it was this way that you could just do peer-to-peer. You could share MP3s and share music online. Before Spotify and YouTube, there wasn't a way to really get music or exchange it in an easy way, but Napster made it easy. It was kind of like Spotify for like connecting people and people music. And as a musician who I thought coding was stupid, like I was just like, what is this nerdy code stuff? Not interesting to me. But it really opened my mind up to technology and code as an artist, because I could see, to me, to many people who were making music, they saw Napster as a threat, and they were like, oh man, Napster is going to like disrupt music industry. It's take away, you know, there was this whole famous thing with like, I don't know, Metallica at the time, you know, but anyway, so there was, you know, but I actually saw it for whatever reason with like a sense of curiosity where I was like, wow, this is amazing. As a musician, I could put my music out there and now people can listen to it and I can listen to other people's music. And I think that's actually the reality of what did happen is it spawned this whole new wave of people owning and sharing and making music. So when I saw that whole wave as a musician, I did my master's in, this is nerdy, but it's called new media. It's basically distributed network culture. So like the culture about how distributed networks disrupt hierarchies. Like that's really, I focus mostly on the music industry and the movie industry and like art. And from there, I had been teaching myself how to code. And so I had started teaching people how to code and starting a company, which was my last company. We went through Y Combinator, and it was like teaching people how to code, because I was like, code is awesome. It can give you this freedom to make your own programs and share music and like do all this cool stuff. And so then I saw Bitcoin, and I was like, oh, I get it. Bitcoin is just like Napster for music. Like we can kind of own money and share it, and we don't need somebody in between. And then when I saw Web3, I was like, oh, this has been happening for a decade and a half now with music and Bitcoin. Web3 is like Napster for all the data on the internet. It's for identity. It's for how we share our social network. It's for, and so to me, it's just this like long progression of this kind of like thing I've been passionate about for quite a long time.
Yeah, you truly have been in it for 20 years. That's amazing. So that's kind of something that's one of our like core missions here, is we're trying to figure out how to explain Web3 to people, because it's so big. Like it covers everything. Like you just said, like all the data on the internet. Like it's really hard to make that tangible for people. So do you think Web3 is for traditional Web2 companies, or is it only for startups?
I think we can think of it as like, it's just, as of right now, it's a set of tools, so it's a lot of different things. I can see it as like a set of tools, like a set of things that we can use to make websites more resilient and decentralized, right? But it's a set of tools, right, that improve apps. But the way you're asking the question, for some people, Web3 is like an ideology, and it's like the ideology is like we're going to get to this place where, like I said, people own the apps as opposed to centralized companies solely owning apps, right? I think it's a lot of different things in between there. Like it's principles, it's beliefs, it's like religion for some people. But I think the question of like, is Web3 just for Web2 or Web3? I think based on like the mission and the principles, I think is for everyone, because I think anyone that wants to evolve the state of, and when we say the internet is like our entire lives now. I mean, we imagine the metaverse is like coming. Like I think this is the metaverse right now. I mean, 8 hours of my day, where are we right now? Am I in a room, or are we in a room together? Are we in between the wires of the phone? Like, where are we, right? We are in the metaverse right now. Like, okay, so let's get past that. And so I think Web3 is for anyone who is like in this place that we are and wants just to evolve this experience to make it better. So I do think it's for everyone. But from a tool standpoint, is it for existing companies? I think some of the tools are, and I think some aren't. I think one that is really powerful, and I think for the next year is the one that I'm kind of putting my bet on, is identity. Because identity is the gateway. It's the first step onto any app. Identity being a username and password, right? Being able to put your username and password in. And right now, Web2 doesn't really do that effectively. Every username and password gets owned by the company where I give it. I have a separate identity with LinkedIn. I have a separate identity with Instagram. And we can see time and time again, like literally every day, these sites get hacked. They don't know how to manage it. Then my data gets hacked. They're not really good at managing these identities. We saw a few weeks ago, Elon Musk bought Twitter, and then, the identities on that site, whether it was a site like Mastodon literally got completely kicked off the site of Twitter, just because of something they tweeted that didn't follow the new rules. And so the idea to own your identity and not be able to get like deplatformed so easily, and to evolve that, is like such a great tool that Web3 offers us. And it's ready right now with something called, I would say, sign on with Ethereum. We can talk about that, but basically a way that you can sign on and own your own keys, own your own data. That could go for I could see Instagram doing that. I could see LinkedIn doing that. I could see any new startup that wants to kind of become a Web3 company. That's tipping your toes in. And it's like a few lines of code that you could add to your project and start to evolve with the internet, side by side.
Mm-hmm. What's the incentive for those companies to do that? Because one might say, well, why would I want to add in a login that I don't own as a company, just as like corporate greed? I'm just trying to play devil's advocate from a company side of like, why would I want to put that code in there for sign on with Ethereum?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think that this could be played. I think I could argue this both ways, but I think the positive side of it is that having the username and all that data, the more data that you have as a company, the bigger liability it is. And seeing a trend now over the past 6 months where it's very kind of quietly, these big companies are actually shifting towards more Web3 principles. And for example, what I mean by that is we've seen in August of 2022, Facebook kind of quietly announced that they're going to start doing default signal level end-to-end encryption in the messages. To kind of repeat that in more normal way for people who are new, it basically means that they're not going to own any of the chat data anymore, because they don't want the liability, because there were specific things that were happening where the government is like, hey, you have the data. Hey, you have the data. Similarly, Apple, just in December of 2022, they have a really they have a few new suite of privacy things where they're also not holding certain data and letting the users hold it through encryption. And so I think the liability thing is a trend. I think that's number one. I think number two is if you really do believe that the internet's going to evolve, and of course it's going to evolve, right? We didn't even have iPhones like 13 years ago or something. I don't know, something like that, right? If you really believe that, then allowing people to sign in with a Web3 wallet and bring that in, you attract a new segment of your audience. And even if you're Instagram, I think, bringing in that audience, now you have like a really smart, like you have the tastemakers of the next wave. And if you want to start to use additional Web3 tools like NFTs or POAPs for like showing proof of attendance, or a whole range of things that you can like help improve your community, you already have people like ready to like play that game. You don't have to, and then you'll be like the only place in town to have that key advantage. And so I think that there's a lot of, and I think we're starting to see that with the adoption, smaller startups, but I think that I think there's a possibility for like a wave of new people adopting this in the next year.
How do you like so one of the tenets of like Web 2 is centralization. And I want to almost like continue on with the devil's advocate position that Sean just had.
Yeah.
But for companies that are interested in getting Web3, centralization means control. Decentralization, does it also mean that they're losing control? Like, should they be scared of Web3 and like what that might bring in? Because all of a sudden they're not the ones that can decide if someone can get kicked off, like Mastodon and Twitter.
Yeah. So should the incumbents like Facebook and Instagram be afraid of Web3 in some ways? Is that part of the question?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, I think for sure. I think it is a threat because specifically the business model of Web 2 is the ad-based business model. And it's been that way since the beginning of the internet. Mark Andreessen, who created the original browser and now works at Andreessen Horowitz, which is the biggest VC firm, calls this decision of the internet's original sin to not have a way to allow people to monetize other than with advertising. There wasn't a way. It was talked about back then, but the technology just wasn't ready enough for a monetization and ways. So I think there's this echo where for 20 years since the 90s when the web browser started, there's this like space that the advertising model has just become the predominant model. And yeah, I think that these companies do need to evolve with this. I think it's inevitable because now we have these new models of monetization. So I don't know. I mean, it's easy to say, hey, I'm not a fan of what Mark's doing with Meta, Mark Zuckerberg with Meta, because, I think some of the videos are a little cringy sometimes. It's kind of like, what is this Meta thing? And at the same time, like, I wonder if he sees that writing on the wall and is just like saying, and jumping to the next thing and like hardware or something that you can, and so that was when I watched that video a year or so ago. I was like, I just feel like he sees it. And I think he's obviously a really smart dude. And same thing with Mark Andreessen, who I just mentioned, their VC fund at Andreessen Horowitz has invested $4 billion into Web3 technology. So I do feel like the people who are like some of the smartest people in the room, you just try to see where they're putting their money and time. And I think think you're right. I think it is a threat for those companies, and I think in some part they know it.
Yep, it's hard to ignore when the smartest people are deploying that much money into something. So earlier on this call and on the Twitter Spaces this week, you mentioned that Web3 is having an identity crisis, and you kind of mean that in two ways. One, literally, because nobody really knows what Web3 is. We all have our own definition, and it means so many things. And then two, like, we don't have control over our identity in the web, and Web3 can solve that. Can you explain what you meant when you said that identity is the main objective to bring Web3 to more people?
Yeah. So, I mean, pretty simply, the first thing you do when you come to most apps is you sign on, right? And so, just allowing people to use the Web3 way. So I think for listeners or for who are maybe newer to this and maybe don't have a web wallet, the idea, it's actually like a really complex idea, but in some ways it's really simple the more you kind of like peel it apart. But what a web wallet allows you to do is have, I would say, like one master password kind of. And it's kind of like an email. Like we're all familiar with like having an email and a password, right? And in this case, what we would call the email, the username, is this string of numbers or a name. Mine's Castig.eth, for example. So you basically have this public address that people can either send you a message at, like on Console, the chat app we're building. If I log in as Castig.eth, I'm the only Castig.eth in the world. It's kind of like the domain name for me. And if you're chatting with me, you can feel confident that it is who I say I am, because I'm the only person that could like possibly have that by math, right? By like have that name. So that's the username, and it allows us to distinguish ourselves and build trust and signal, and then also own that name. I can be Castig.eth on Console. Hopefully, if these tools get more adopted, I could then come, maybe be Castig.eth on Instagram, on YouTube. Right now, there's other sites, Mirror.xyz. I could bring this identity and I could be the same person. And as a whole ecosystem of the internet, this allows me to build kind of like, it's almost like an identification, right? Of like who you are and trust, I think. And like, oh, this is the person who they say they are. This is what I can expect from them. So that's kind of what I imagine. And then the other side of that, the password is like, imagine just then having one master password that you had as a user, and then you could use that name on all the different sites. You didn't have to give that to, let's say, LinkedIn, right? And then if LinkedIn ever gets hacked, which they did for like 700 billion accounts, got passwords. There's a funny story. Even Barack Obama's password got leaked. It's like literally on the internet. And then at the time, like you could just go in and be Barack Obama on LinkedIn. Like this is not great, funny. Right? They have too much power. So this would be the shift, is like giving one master password, and some other additional protections. Obviously, we don't want to be able to lose that one password. I think that there's some additional things that the Web3 community needs to work on to improve security. But this is the vision, I would say, is giving that master password back to the users. And that's what I mean when I say identity is that first step, because we all need that to get into any place on the web, to get into any place around town, to do our taxes, to buy a, I don't know, veggie burger or whatever we're doing. I mean, everything you do on an app, whether it's getting food delivered to your house or voting, has to be, you have to say who you are first,
I want to take like part of what you said and like bring a analogy just for listeners too, of like what's something that exists today. And I think a relevant one might be like login with Apple or like sign up with Apple. Would you say that the difference between like Web 2 and Web 3 is that in Web 2 we have sign up or login with Apple, but it's Apple that controls this versus you owning that? And in Web 3, you can use that kind of login with Apple kind of thing for everything and any application and any like platform.
That's the perfect analogy. Yeah. So around 2010, Facebook was one of the first companies to do Facebook Connect. And their idea was you've seen it before. It's that blue. It's the same thing you're talking about, but with Facebook, it's this blue button. It'd be like a Facebook Connect button, and you would have. It's like, hey, let's use your Facebook account for every single thing on the internet. Soon after, Apple, Google kind of have similar things. So now there's a few different options. It's the same idea, except that people are fed up with just being at the helm of these companies, right? These American,
the big three, big four companies.
And there's countless incidents of people's accounts being shut down, people's accounts being surveilled, handed over to the government for things. I think there's just and then data breaches as well. You can go to a site you guys probably know about, Have I Been Pawned, right? PWNED, I think. If just Google it and put your email in there, and you'll see all the times that your email and password have been leaked on the internet. So it's also just like, do we trust them to protect us? And I think there's a lot of issues. So it's exactly that. It's taking that, but creating it in an open way so that you own that, as opposed to, a Wall Street company or whatever, like a big company that has other stakeholders than you.
So we're talking about identity here. So I think we can segue into kind of what you're building at Console and how you guys view identity and how you guys are handling identity there.
Yeah. Console is a chat platform. We are making the world's best group chat platform. So for communities to come and to, let's say, take some action, whether it's like social, whether it's go to events, whether it's a community like ENS, which is like building the next frontier of the internet, whether it's an investment fund, it could be anything. But there's communities have certain needs, and we don't feel that they're being met on any platform that exists today. Majority of these like Web3 communities are on Discord, and we started the project about a year and a half ago, and since then we've spoken with well over 100 communities, and we hear the same things over and over again. Discord is loud and noisy. Number one. Number two, onboarding is just terrible. People come in, they don't know where to go, they don't know where things are happening, and then number three, there's a whole litany of security issues, because primarily Discord was made for gamers, and so they haven't really evolved with like technology as it comes out, and so they do all these workarounds for Web3, but it's not really working. So we saw this opportunity in October, started the project around October 2021, about a year and a half ago, and we just saw this opportunity to use Web3 principles to build. What is the world's best group chat platform looks like? Well, it's going to be one where people can come and focus. They can have better ways of trusting the people in the community, or not trusting. I mean, better ways to discern that, better ways to have better security with native built-in Web3 tools. And then for the project to eventually be open source, so that even if we jumped into a volcano and we're never to be seen again, the code would be there. You guys could run it. You have your data. You don't have to worry about us. I wouldn't just foreshadow something that crazy happens in my life 10 years from now.
Well,
they'd be like, I heard it on the I was talking with Thomas and Sean. But no,
I hope this prediction does not come true.
Especially the volcano part. That sounds terrible.
Yeah. You briefly alluded to it earlier, but you were talking about 3 principles that kind of guide what you're building at Console. Can you go over those? Because I really, really liked how you outlined those on the Twitter Spaces earlier this week.
Yeah, thanks for asking. I think the principles are really important, and something I've been writing about and looking to share soon, because I think as we have this identity crisis, what I'm calling it, of like, we're all kind of building different parts of the thing, the elephant. We're like, what is this big thing we're putting together? Which I think is healthy when we're like thinking and experimenting. But I think as a product designer, there's a time for what's called divergent thinking, of thinking wide and big. And I feel like that's where we are at Web3. And then it's good to have a cycle of, okay, let's all align back together and converge and like bring that together. And for that, principles, like that we can kind of all have a North Star and agree on, I think will help align us. And so I've been thinking about those in terms of Console. What are the things that we stand for? What are the things that we want to lead and hope that other apps follow in the ecosystem? And for us, we have three. The first one is promote decentralization. That is actually a principle that goes back all the way well before Web3 into the open source in the 1960s. But anyway, so I'm kind of borrowing that because it is something that I think is it's been true since the beginning of the internet. And it's something that with Web3, I think we could do better. Promote decentralization. I talked a little bit about it already, but to kind of highlight it, it basically is that idea that there's not just one central person or code base that we control. Rather, it is something that is available so that if we the volcano thing, if we go to a volcano, that the app could like basically run. You could own your code, you could have access to it, and so there's a series of tools that we're using to decentralize our chat. We're using Matrix protocol, and different things like at our integration with ENS so that identity is decentralized. We don't own identity. So promote decentralization is number one. Number two is working in public. So even just sharing more ideas of what we're doing, co-creating. We're co-creating right now with a cohort of communities. And so looking to get feedback and integrate that. And open sourcing the project, like I said, in a way that like the code will be there so that people can look at it and trust it and not have to trust us. You can trust the code. So yeah, promote decentralization, working in public. And number three would be, I would say just ownership, like letting people own their identity, letting people own their data, letting people export their data, import it, maybe in the future fork Console, which basically means if you don't like what we're doing, make your own version and just go build on it. And so that data ownership. And, these are three things that aren't possible with any of the chat apps that exist right now in Web 2, Discord, Telegram, all this kind of stuff. And so, having all three of those together, we think is like to us, again, that was the question, how do we build the world's best group chat app? And so that was part of what we saw as the future.
So I've got a question. I wrote down all these things that you said. You said you're giving up control. Console is decentralized. People can run it themselves. It's open source. It's trustless. You're working in public. You're letting people take ownership. And if someone doesn't even like what you're doing, they can even fork it and kind of build on their own. What possibly is your business model then? Like, how do you make money at all if you're giving all this control up?
Yeah, that's a great question. So there is a long line of open source projects that have business models. I mean, in some ways, I think what we're doing is we're just building on this kind of lineage of a company like WordPress, for example, I think is a good model where it's one of the biggest projects in the entire internet. Literally, a fact I love is that literally 40% of all the websites on the internet right now are WordPress websites. It's this thing that we're like, wow, that's amazing. Like 40% of all the websites. And they have a huge, engine of a business behind it. And, the way that they're working is, it's so much the freemium model where if you want the basic plan, the basics are open source and you could kind of run the blogging platform. But if you want the add-ons, right, if you want like the VIP, if you want the certain, so we'll have, I imagine that we'll have different, add-ons, modules, enterprise plans, all this kind of stuff. We'll run it for you. To be honest, most people don't want to run their own server, right? So I think part of allowing people to do it is important because it gives power to the user. But at the end of the day, I think primarily people will want to have someone else run their server and they will want help with these things. I think the importance of all these principles are some of the ones I mentioned about, forking it and stuff like that. It's so fringe, if 1 million people are on Console, I imagine like 5 people will be the people that start to do that. It'll be small, right? Yeah. But allowing people to exit, allowing people that power, I think that's important because it's when you don't have that, which was where we are with Twitter right now. You can't fork Twitter and then just kind of make your own version.
And take people with you.
And take people with you, right? And so I think it's a large part about having that option so that people can feel empowered and that they can be empowered to do things. So I think you're right. I think that there is like a challenge ahead of us. I think we are experimenting. We've only been around for a year and a half, so I think we don't have all the answers on this yet, but I think following some of those open source models like WordPress and freemium models seem to be the way that we would monetize eventually.
Mm-hmm. Can you kind of walk through some examples of group chats and communities that are in the console beta right now, just to kind of paint a picture of what's going on in there?
Yeah, for sure. Right now, we have just a few communities, and they're mostly just kind of part of the first cohort helping test, basically, to give us feedback. This community, CrashPunks, left in October. They closed down their Discord and came over, and we've been working with them. It's a few hundred people in that community. The thing that is exciting about the early communities is we get this opportunity to co-create with them. I've said that word before a few times. And what that means is like, we want to observe and learn what issues these communities have so that we can make something that they love. And one thing that we learned with the CrashPunks community is that they have a few other integrations. Like they have a store, like where they sell merch, and they have a game. And so with Console, we have this feature, we're able to like bring in outside integrations. And so you can be in the Console for their group, and you can chat, and then with just one click you can just bring in the store right into there, and it looks pretty seamless. Cool. And bring in the game. And so we had someone from that community, they call it like they're like, oh, this is like the operating system for our Web3 community. And like, so that's been an interesting experiment with them, and we'd like to do more of that. Whether a lot of these communities have you have Notion docs, you have Snapshot, you have a Gnosis Safe, you have all these things. And what we are observing is that, there's communities in Discord, and they get low engagement, or people don't know how to be involved because they don't know where to find all these links, and they get, it's really confusing. So making this kind of view of operating system is really been helpful. Another community, which is in a current cohort, is called Artisan, and they're working with us looking at onboarding for their community, because they have events, and they want a really nice, like, kind of, we call them docs, but like a way that like when you first come, you can just like read like a Notion doc kind of really nicely in the site, as opposed to just reading like some chat history, and so we're working with them to launch just a really beautiful homepage experience, so that when people come and launch and step into their Console experience, they can really just feel like, oh, I know why I'm here, or why I want to get involved, and I know what events are coming up, and it's really nice. So yeah, that's two examples. And I think I mention all of these because these are all experiments, and anyone listening who wants to be on Console, like, these are things that we're looking over the next 6 months to the rest of the year, is just to like continue to experiment in our beta phase, so that we can figure out the things that are really working and can be used and scaled to more communities.
Mm-hmm. I'm surprised that the word DAO hasn't come up yet. Or do you guys look at targeting DAOs, or is that just not a word that we use anymore?
We stopped using that in 2022. That's a dirty word now.
No, it's a dirty word.
It's 2023 now.
Originally, we I think there's some promise for DAOs. It's hard to kind of tell. I think so. Originally, we were positioning ourselves more as like Web3 chat plus DAO tooling, and it might even say that in a few places still. I think the thing that got lost from me with what we're calling DAOs is that, and this is part of the identity problem, I think, of like, there's like this kind of very rigid definition that's come up about what a DAO is. And in some ways, I've seen this idea of this decentralized group of people who fits these check marks of has a Discord, has a Gnosis Safe, has like so many people in it, they all don't live in one country. Like there's like all these rules, like whether they're legally or organizationally, that I feel in some ways kind of limits, and like I think people from the outside are like, I don't know, this is too complicated or something. And then kind of all the way to the side, different part of the room, you look, and there's a lot of just online communities, which I would say, like broadly, that are doing amazing things that like a DAO could do, or online. And so I don't know where the line is between like calling something a DAO. I mean, if you're voting and you have a Gnosis safe with multiple owners, are you a DAO? So I think the opportunity is to rethink what these mean, and I am. I feel like I like what's it called? Like whip the, I don't know analogy I'm trying to use. But like, I feel like I have a strict feeling about, I just want to see more examples of people doing real things, and I don't care what we call them. And so when I hear people talk about, here's how DAO should be, and like this really long academic, I mean, I teach at a university, like I'm academic AF, but like at some point I'm like, let's just like come together with a mission and collectively do something. And there's been a handful of examples I could say that are amazing, and there's been, probably 10 times that have been underwhelming. And so, I think I've moved away from using the word DAO a little bit, and not because they're not. I mean, they're definitely part of what we're doing, and there's definitely DAOs coming to Console and part of Console. But I just more broadly look at them as online communities, and so they're part of that bucket to me, and I'm happy to support them. I think that we have some tools that would be particularly relevant, like treasury integrations, like voting and all this stuff. But anyone can use those tools. They don't need to legally be a DAO,
When you talk about communities and I guess DAOs, but that's 2022.
No, we could. I mean, it's not really a dirty word. I was just kidding.
But when we talk about these online communities, these like groups of people together, what's your take on, should they be small, should they be big, or should they be growing? I guess like what's the goal of communities? Because there's a lot of people that think that you always want to grow, you want to get bigger, and then there's others that also think like, well, it's okay for us to conserve and kind of keep what we have and just kind of like maintain it and grow organically versus trying to just get big for no reason.
I'd love to throw this one back at you guys. What do you guys think? That's a great question.
My gut says we like to keep it small. I mean, that's how we run our business, and we don't grow for the sake of growing our agency business. We really question that growth. So I think that would be my gut reaction. Thomas, what's yours?
I forgot who we talked to. Was it Corey from Superfest? Was that him?
Maybe.
I really liked it, and that's kind of like where the question came from. He had the comment about how everyone's just been growing too fast, and it's just okay to stop. And Sean, just like we did with Devscale, I'm okay with something like that just like works. And then if you need to grow, you can, but growing for the sake of growing, whether that's like revenue or employees or community members or something, can dilute and change the mission. And sometimes that's okay, but if you're happy, then
I think,
why try?
I mean, there's no right or wrong answer, but I think the thing I'm interested in is people coming together and making things, making change, creating, and it doesn't matter. I mean, if you sub the word DAO for company, it's like, do you like companies that are big or small? It's like, I don't know. It's just like companies that are doing cool stuff. I mean, Instagram was 13 people when it sold, and they were doing a great job, so congrats. The smaller you are, in that way, the better. I think the key takeaway for me the past year with how communities have been forming is that they've been doing it backwards. So there's like, when you release an NFT, there's like, I see two steps. There's like selling or giving people the NFT, which is like kind of like a fundraising step, or like you can call it fundraising. Like you're basically like getting it out there. And then the second step is like, okay, now we're all here. We all own this thing. What are we going to do? And I feel like if it was started the other way around, it would be in line with what I think the three of us are citing as being more interesting to us, which is like, hey, there's this thing we want to do. Here's a few people that want to do it. And then when we need, whether it's capital or we need to like share ownership in it, at this point, I'm looking at a company right? Like a company starts with a mission, a few people, and then you do fundraising. Maybe eventually you IPO. The whole NFT, a lot of the NFTs and DAOs of the past, I'd say 2020, 2021-ish, 2022-ish area, it seems like they were like, hey, we're going to IPO today. Like literally it was called an ICO for a while, but then like IPO or whatever it is. And then it's like, cool, now we just IPO'd. What are we going to do? And it's like, all right, crickets. So
Well, take our money and run is what
we're going to take your money and run.
That's why I think you like community over DAO then, because it's just the people first.
I think it's about the people. Yeah.
I forget where I heard this. Maybe this was you that said it, but somewhere I read that communities create NFTs. NFTs don't create communities.
Ooh,
and I think it's exactly what you're saying.
I didn't say that, but I like that.
Yeah, if you start with the NFT, then like, okay, what's the point? It's just a money grab, theoretically. It might look like it. But if the community is built and has a mission and you release an NFT, then that's a different story. That could have some utility and some use.
I like that.
I hear you writing that one down.
Yeah, I'm writing that one down. I like that one.
Well, don't give me credit because I definitely did not. I heard that somewhere.
That's a good one. I like that.
So what types of communities are you most excited about to get into Console? Because I'm going to be honest, like I was not part of many internet communities until Web3. It's not a natural thing for me, or it wasn't in my life, I guess. I wasn't in Discords. I wasn't in necessarily like big Facebook group chats or anything. Like what are the types of communities that like you can't wait to get in there that kind of paints a more clear picture for people?
Yeah. That's really interesting that you share that. Yeah. Cause it just makes, it's so interesting. It makes me think about, there's this wave of interest. Yeah. With Web3 that now people are more interested in online communities that maybe in the past there was, there was like Reddit, there still are Reddit communities, maybe like Wikipedia is a community in a way, Facebook groups, like there was things, but it seems like Web3 has brought with it an ever more excitement to work with strangers. Like it feels like that's like happening more and more. And we see that on Twitter Spaces where there'll be like 100 people. They don't know each other in real life, but they're kind of coming together. Which communities are we excited about? I'm mostly excited about, everybody's welcome on Console, of course, but I think the ones I'm particularly excited about and that we're welcoming into the cohorts. And when I say the cohorts, these are like, as I mentioned, groups that we're working with. Eventually it will be open for everybody. So that's a, kind of thing that's confusing sometimes to people. But the reason we're doing this now is so we could test with people. And a lot of the ones that we're choosing to work with are ones that I would say have some kind of mission. Like that's pretty much it. It's like they have a reason to kind of exist, and whether it's creating something or education. We would love like more like the ENS community to come on. We're speaking with them, although I'm not sure, that's like in the works, but we love like them to come on because I think they're a DAO and they're a community that has a pretty clear mission to, I'd say, evolve domains and like identity on the internet, and it's so aligned with what we're doing. And so, we're working closely with them, but I think it'd be great to eventually have them join us. And I think other mission-driven companies, I mentioned Artisan, they're doing fundraising for public goods. Gitcoin, similarly doing fundraising for public goods. There's a bunch of NFT artists that we're speaking with for the next cohort. I think people who, they want to experiment with music NFTs and digitizing their art and bringing those people together in that community with the kind of things on Console we could offer, like events, giveaways, like all of these kind of things to like bring people together and share that experience and co-create within their own community. So there's quite a few. We're talking with communities every day, and so I'm just kind of endlessly. I guess there's a lot of creativity. There's a lot going on right now, even though it's
mind blown by all the different possibilities.
My mind is blown by how creative and amazing people are. We've had 700 people apply to be on Console, like just communities. So and we've probably spoken with like maybe half of them at this point. So it's been a lot of creativity.
So when you described community just now, and when I think of community, and maybe a lot of other people too, they think of like you're getting behind a mission, a cause. Like this is it. For some reason, I think of it as like almost extracurricular or like a hobby or like a passion versus like a business. And so Sean and I were recently talking about like putting together a game plan for our company, Devscale, to have like what's our Web3 game plan. So I'm wondering, can businesses have so businesses can have communities, but how can a normal, I don't know if it's normal, but like a Web2 business have a community, or what would a community look like for a business like ours?
Yeah, tell me more about what your community or what your customers or listeners look like now. I mean, I'd be kind of curious to learn from you guys what how you see it.
Yeah, so on the business side, the agency, it's a software agency. So our clients are businesses, right, that are building mobile apps, web apps, backend services, that kind of thing. And then I definitely see, like, we will be in Console once we transition our audience on Built on Web3 into a community. Like, that'll happen. We're not ready for that yet, but we'll definitely do that. But yeah, I guess on the business side is where Thomas's question is focused.
Yeah, and like maybe like the employees or maybe contractors that you have. Think of like any business that's, I don't know, got like 20 to 50 people that like work in it. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I think that like one of the things we're doing at Console is it's not just like Web3 Discord. It's a different thing altogether. Like we're really reimagining how people come together and can focus and create some meaning in their life. Like whether that's like learning something valuable or like contributing code or art. It's just a place to like connect with people and find meaning. And our main core feature is the chat, because we do believe what we've seen with how people work on Telegram and different, Slack is like that tends to be kind of the lifeblood of like it's a very present place like for chat. And I'd say that's the core. And then in addition, though, there's a lot of things that can supercharge that and can connect people that you don't even need the chat. So, we're really open-minded. Like we have a mission and a vision of what we're doing. At the same time, we're always trying to learn. And, we're learning from some communities who there's one or two that might not even want to use the chat feature, but are interested in some of the other features. So being able to come to Console and log in with your web wallet and we have what's called the people page, and you can just basically see it's like a CRM. It's a directory of all the people, and having a way to like email and reach out to them, having the events up. There's other kinds of ways that we can think about, I'd say, extending this word community, because like a group of people could be a community. They could be fans, they could be customers, right? They could be coworkers. And I don't know that chat is like the answer to all of these scenarios all the time. And at the same time, having a trusted space, and by trusted, that's where the identity piece comes in. Like if I can go and I can say, I know I'm in this group with Thomas, Sean, and Castig are in this group. We're going to set up an event. We're going to have a kind of chat like this. We're going to have some docs we co-create on. There's all these other things you could do aside from chat that I think can be valuable for bringing people together that aren't, contrast that to like what Slack is good for. I'd say Slack is good for like companies. It's like everybody has an email, you assign, you're paying everybody. But I think when you break out of that model and you have different networks of ways that you contribute, imagine, someone like these big companies like Nike right now are doing these NFT projects. They're having their company and they have customers, but now they have this like third thing, which is like, these people who are interested in these NFTs and they're like probably their biggest supporters. How do you bring those people into the fold? How do you empower them, arrange them? How do you give them rewards? the Web3 identity allows you to do a lot of that by just kind of recognizing who the person is, by having their wallet address, being able to send them airdrops, or being able to interact with them in like a CRM kind of way. So I'm just kind of brainstorming here just to say that like I think we're trying to figure out that as this evolves, and that I don't think it always has to do 100% with chat. I think that that's like one of the key things that we're thinking about of how we bring Console to people's lives. So there's not just like another chat app that you're like, oh my God, I'm getting a million chats a day. It's like this kind of suite of features that we're working on. And I think it can shape with the different communities and structures. And so we're trying to figure it out, but those are some of the thoughts on how we're talking about it internally at the moment. If you guys have any other additional thoughts on that, I would love to hear.
Yeah. Well, one thing that came to mind there is, do you guys have any, this might be relevant or not, but do you guys have any like tooling that helps reward people to gain reputation? Like if they're doing some sort of work, or and the community wants to reward them for that or recognize them for that. Like, is there any tooling yet that? Yeah, or just like, hey, they designed this podcast cover art and we liked it. You know, we're going to send them a POAP or like whatever. Is there any like built-in tooling for reputation?
Yeah. So we have things coming soon, and so I can kind of talk about what's coming in the future. And so that is definitely on our roadmap. One of the things coming this year is the profile page for all the people, and that will make public to the community your engagement in that community. So if you are voting, if you are active in chat, it'll basically show if you have on-chain activity outside of the community, when you bought your ENS name, or when you started using that wallet address. All of this is really nice information that put together starts to create that digital self, because you can look really quickly at someone and say, this is a person, or this is like, you know, I can understand your personality almost based on like your profile. And so that profile will be a really nice way to, I would say, to like building that sense of trust and within the community of like who these people are.
Yeah. So where would that data live? Is that on chain or is that off chain in like a Disco verified credential or something?
Cool question. So the way the building the app works is most of it is off chain, like normal life, like on AWS, right? Like the app itself, right? And we're bringing in on-chain data to like basically populate that the shell of the app, let's say, in a lot of cases, so that your ENS name comes from the blockchain, so that your Disco data exactly come potentially and integrate there. And anyone who's like super worried about centralization, which isn't too many people, to be honest, it's like, it's a thing we all are shooting for, but the idea is like, even though that's on AWS and centralized, it's like over time we want to sufficiently decentralized so that there's like copies of it on nodes, on IPFS, and all different things, so that like it exists and is resilient. But that's the most, if you're building an app in Web3 right now, or you're thinking of coming in here, a lot of times people say, is it all on the blockchain? And the more you learn, that doesn't even really make sense. Like it would just be so slow and impossible to use an app that was like, it just doesn't really make sense. And that's fine. We're all learning. And so, but I think that, yeah, you kind of have to understand that the shell of the app a lot of times is going to be a lot quicker and responsive if it's just like traditional, like on normal Rails. And then you use that data in order to populate and give people control of that data.
Got it. Makes sense. Yeah, we talked with Evan from Disco a few weeks ago.
Oh, nice. Yeah, they're great. They're doing some great work.
I'm really excited to see that come to fruition. I'll definitely, we're partnering with them, I think, soon to give VCs to our guests. We need a new name for VCs, though. I hate saying that. Giving VCs credentials, whatever they are, to our guests to say like, oh, like we were a guest on the show, and it's in your data backpack, and you can take it wherever you want.
I would love it if you could loop me in on that. I would love to see it in the wild. That sounds really
for
cool.
Sure. Yeah, I need to email them back today to get that going.
Maybe VCrad. I think VCrad. Yeah.
Yeah, we'll see. So you kind of alluded to some things that were coming out this year. What is the next 5 years look like for you? If you could like look ahead 5 years and you've achieved the mission of Console, what does the world look like?
Ooh. 5 years from now, you will be able to download the app and use it. Join, either join a community or have a beautiful experience for chatting groups or one-on-one with friends. I would say as a replacement for Telegram and Discord, it will just be a beautiful and one of the most, secure apps out there, I would say. So I think we want to create that just beautiful experience for people. I think that's part of it for like the user. It's just like having a really, I think some of the best technology is invisible. So it's like when it works, just like having people love it and rely on it and trust it. But that's like the iceberg, I think, of the goal. And that's like all the user needs to know. Like all the under the hood that needs to get us there is open sourcing the project, decentralizing all the servers, like, onboarding all the communities. Like there's a lot of work that we have to do to get there. But from the user perspective, we just want it to feel like an amazing experience. And maybe people won't even know who we are, who created it. And that's fine. Like we just want, we just want to put it out there and have people enjoy it and feel like it makes their lives more focused and clean and useful. So.
Love it. Since we're recording this in the first week of 2023, I'm curious if you have any 2023 predictions for Web3. And we can go back on this next year and see how wrong we were.
Nice. I do think, I mentioned it already. I do think there'll be a rise in importance of identity this year, because identity is like a lot. When I say that, I just mean ENS, sign on with Ethereum, improvements in wallets. Like I'm hoping there'll be some big surprises improvements wallets. If you look at the adoption curve of technology, there's like that, like, what is it? Like 13% of people who are like the innovators who like try things for the first time or something. Like we're still in that innovator phase, and we really need to get to the next hump, which is early adopters, right? We need to like move to be more inclusive of more of the world. And so I think, by the end of this year, I think there will be some big leap that will make Web3 bridge to the early adopters and be more useful. And I think identity is where I'd put my mark on that, because I think it's the thing that makes the most sense. And if people are, I think we have about maybe roughly 40 million people who are using web wallets. I maybe read that somewhere. It's like roughly around right. I think if we could like double that or triple that by the end of the year, I think that would be a really great year. So I think it's going to continue to grow, and I think that will be part of the growth. What do you guys think? Did you guys give your predictions already?
No, we definitely haven't. But I was just thinking of like, in case he does ask, what should I say? I was thinking, I don't know if 2023 is going to be the year, but like when the iPhone came out, or you just like started having a smartphone, people were like, oh yeah, like you have a smartphone or like a dumb, and then that lasted for a long time. I think I don't know if it's going to be true, but 2023 might be the first year where if you ask someone on the street, you have like a 50-50 chance of them telling you like what a digital wallet is, or like maybe,
cool.
Maybe I think, I don't know if it's going to be the year or not, but maybe by the end. So
I love that months. Because like 2017 was this strange year that I overheard people everywhere just talking about Bitcoin. Do you know what I mean? It was like they were finding out about it for the first time. It's funny, Sean, I have this really vivid memory of being in Denver actually, and like it was just these two people who I was like they just didn't look at all like they were just like taller, older, like I don't know, like they were like older finance. It was just like they were like trying to explain Bitcoin to each other, and I was like, wow, this is like everywhere. You can't avoid this. So Thomas, I would love to see that become like the web wallet like year. Like I love that idea.
Yeah, well, I'm looking forward to seeing that happen this year. Chris, thanks for being on the show. This was seriously a lot of fun. Learned a lot here. Can
I add one more thing, maybe? If you don't mind?
Go for it.
I think the last thing I would add would be, I I would hope that we could reclaim the word crypto, because right now crypto means cryptocurrency. I think it should mean cryptography again, is what it really meant. Because Web3 is fine without cryptocurrency. You don't need to be on console or a lot of these apps with any cryptocurrency, but you do need the web wallet. And what that's doing is it's this master password I told you guys about, we were talking about. I mean, that's based on just amazing cryptography. And I think reclaiming that can help separate Web3 from cryptocurrency, so that the next time there's like these huge crashes and waves, that we can succeed without having to rely on the currency thing, because it's separate.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree, and that's why we named the show Built on Web3, because like we refuse to put the word crypto in there because it has so much baggage, right?
Yeah, it does. Yeah,
we don't want to be a crypto podcast, but I would love to be able to rename it if we can at some point.
All right, so crypto's out, DAOs are out. We have a whole new vocabulary here.
Even now, though. Sean and I were talking about it yesterday, going to events. You type in Web3, like nothing pops up like near me, but you type in crypto, everything pops up, and it's all like the crap, you know? So
it's all finance bros.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was a little upset about, I read the Masari report that Masari puts out every year. I find it really nice. And I guess Ryan, who writes that, is like, we should stop using the word Web3 because it's like bad luck. Or so. I was just like, oh no, this is like, it's just a different thing, man. It's like not, it's like you got to decouple it and make it its own thing. And I don't think enough people are aware of what that means. And I agree with you guys. I think that would all help, having events and just more education. And what you guys are doing is amazing. So thank you so much. I love this podcast. This is great. Thank you.
Yeah, appreciate it. And thank you for coming on the show.
For sure.
We'll have you on again for sure once we, in the future, we'll let you know.
And go to Console.xyz if you want to find out more about Console or join Console. I should say
cool.
That.
And your Twitter is at Castig, right?
Castig. Yep, at Castig.
Great. We will link all of that stuff in the description.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks again, Chris.
Thank you, guys.